So welcome back, everybody. And so just to kind of finish off the commercial aspects of it, I'd like to introduce Christopher George, CTO of DDrDrive. And hopefully he'll do a little bit of speaking now.
Hello, again, Christopher George with DDrDrive. I'm the founder and also the architect of our namesake product. I just was going to keep this real informal, but I'm just, one, I love ZFS, and two, just the hybrid storage pool. So kudos to Matt and that original design, which kind of makes this all possible. So we're big supporters of OpenZFS. Really what I was going to do today is just show our newest revision and a new product introduction. So start with that, and then just any questions from the crowd. So what you're seeing on here is actually our original. I'm a much better engineer than I am a marketer, so that our website sadly hasn't been updated since May of '09. How embarrassing is that to admit, especially on camera? But here's our newest revision. The most common, most obvious is that we're now with obviously low profile DIMMs, which we did almost immediately after taking this photo. But it's
and you can hold the microphone.
A PCI Express card. So this is what most customers are familiar with. And then truly the saving grace. So overall we're talking about a ZIL or a log device. And our intent was to design what I hope to be kind of the ultimate ZIL. So the speed, performance, endurance, longevity of DRAM. And then with the non-volatility of flash only being utilized on a power failure. And then really the missing link of what we're introducing today is our 5-cap super cap power pack. And for some reason I enjoy saying that. But there's a certain alliteration to super cap power pack. But so this would mount internal to the chassis, which again would preclude or replace the external power which we've had in the past. And so you have one attachment to the card and then one to the power supply. What's also unique about our product is it requires, or in my case I was kind of happy to oblige, is a custom device driver. So we were able to basically target ZIL optimization all the way from the driver all the way down to the hardware. And I really feel because of that we were able to do some unique things that wouldn't be possible if one were forced to hit more a standard storage layer like SCSI or SAS. So there was a lot of kind of exciting optimizations with that short circuiting of taking directly SCSI and immediately taking a SCSI command and putting that to a memory-to-memory transfer. I really believe storage overall it's just an extension of the memory hierarchy. So I basically designed a device that kind of acted just like a memory device, and obviously that's a good fit for DDR. But our driver model kind of instantiated that idea of why hinder or slow the hardware trying to understand SCSI when ultimately we really want to just move data, reads and writes. So that's kind of the genesis, and this is what we're introducing today. And again, cool. OpenZFS, and hopefully that's short and sweet and open to any questions if there may be. Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
So, do you know Fusion.io?
I do, yes.
Yes, and what's the difference between DDrDrive and Fusion.io?
I'd consider them pretty different. Not sure if they're
Technology
comparable products, but they are also Flash and PCI Express. I was lucky enough to know David Flynn, the founder of Fusion.io, so that he's no longer with, but they had, obviously it's a great product. I think when I think Fusion.io, I think, boy, it'd be just a great L2 ARC device. I think it'd be a perfect fit. I would love to see, you know, a Fusion.io and a DDrDrive side by side.
The Fusion.io it's just the Fusion.io, at least that I'm familiar with, is it's just Flash, yes. Versus this is primarily DRAM, right? So the point of this is that like it's smaller capacity than you might get with a Fusion.io, but the latency is going to be a lot better because you're writing to DRAM, and then it just copies it to Flash when you lose power. So this is like for a log device versus the flash-based things would be for like a cache device.
Yeah. Okay. But I think I love the idea of PCI Express, and any flash on PCI Express is, I think, a positive development. I mean, I really think solid-state technology needs to move as close to the CPU with the lowest latency possible, and that device perfectly and was a very early example. So I think a good product.
Do you have any performance numbers that you can share with us, like latency or bandwidth to your newest product?
So the last Open Storage Summit we announced, and this is testing on Nixenta using iometer. I mean, benchmarks, we all know benchmarks are benchmarks. But I actually did them all myself, because I don't know. I was tired of other vendors playing games, and I wanted to be able to stand up like this and say, well, I did that, and I'm telling you the truth kind of thing. So we hit like 44,000 IOPS, and that's using a 4K random write workload with iometer. And that's running our card running an earlier version, basically Open Solaris, which was the whatever the Nixenta plus their unique patches.
Cool.
So, and on our website, we actually promote, when we first introduced the product, we also offered a Windows driver, which we no longer support. That shows we have to be unique. We're the only SSD vendor exclusively targeting ZIL acceleration. I'd like to think there's if you line them all up, it's going to be me. So we're obviously passionate about the product. But yeah, is that 44,000?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I would love to run a 512. At some point, we'd like to change. The ZIL code actually has a minimum block size of 4K. So you can't utilize, our real true strength is low latency. So the smaller the block size, the more obvious that benefit. So when we first introduced, and this is, again, many years ago, we did like 300,000 IOPS off of just a PCI Express Gen 1 connector, and that was pretty unique at the time, and still kind of is. So we would love to be able to show a 512 benchmark that's specific to the ZIL. I hate doing iometer kind of stuff because it's not workload specific.
I don't suppose you have drivers that work with VMware.
No, but we have a list, and I get these emails. I get hit over the head on a daily basis. So it's kind of interesting too. So FreeBSD is the most asked for, and then Linux, and then VMware. Normally those guys just say VDI, and they just want to make it work, and they don't normally even ask. Sometimes they're not even. They know exactly that they need a driver. They just want us to make VDI faster, specifically to VMware. So currently we support every Solaris derivative. Obviously Nixenta, OmniOS, which is, I'd be curious to see. Anyone using OmniOS?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Our product is based on OmniOS.
Yeah, just a huge uptick in support. So I really give kudos to those guys for doing a great job, because a lot of production workloads are moving to OmniOS, and we're the kind of canary in the coal mine. So we hear about things immediately. Half the time it's about stuff that has nothing to do with us, but we hear it, and they're doing a great job. So I think the community supporting OmniOS's efforts I'm right behind them. So, Ryan.
I kind of just wanted to ask about, there was some talk on the mailing lists very recently about all SSD pools and whether you still need to have a separate log device. If you kind of want to, you can explain why that might be possible, whether it's a good idea or not a good idea.
Yeah, I'm a real direct person, so it's kind of contentious, because the idea is some have taken a tack that if you have an all SSD pool and then the hybrid storage model, the idea of having a second or a dedicated ZIL device wouldn't have the same value as it would have if you had hard drives being the bulk of the store. And I personally disagree with that for two reasons. And one I think is the least often seen is traffic contention. I mean, one of the beauties, especially about being PCI Express and a ZIL, is all of that traffic has its own dedicated independent path. And the moment that path has to be shared over the same external cables to the same JBOD, or even just the same pool traffic, you have pool contention. And anytime you have pool contention, you're increasing latency. So to me, just from a performance standpoint, the ZIL concept is just as valid today as it would be with hard drives, and just as valid today with SSDs. And then to me, even the more obvious is, our customers, our product just gets pounded on 24/7 with random writes. And I designed the NAND controller, so I'm pretty familiar. I mean, that's the worst case scenario for NAND. So it's, what did the customer spend in those SSDs? For a meaningful size pool, 50K and up. I mean, a meaningful amount of money on SSDs. Why would you want to just beat them to death with basically random write ZIL traffic? I mean, I believe the ZIL could easily just pay for itself as far as longevity for the remainder of the pool. So again, I think it goes the true, the elegance of the original design. I think the separate log device is just as valid today with an all SSD pool as it was prior. But I'm sure there could be those that would argue.
I mean, I would argue that the latency to DRAM is still an order of magnitude faster than latency to flash. So, it depends on how much performance you want. If you're using a flash device for your log device before, then yeah, maybe if you go to all flash pool, then you might as well just stick with maybe you don't need a separate log device. But if you actually need the latency of DRAM, then you still need the latency of DRAM whether you have a disk or a flash-based pool.
Yeah. Well, that, should have just gave the question right to you. Yeah, well put. I mean, someone else had just asked a question. I thought this was interesting too. A good way of thinking about it is, each I/O I consider like a hop. So the moment it touches a controller, be it an FPGA or an ASIC, that's just a certain amount of latency that's involved, irrespective of who makes the chip. There's just time to get on and then get back off. And a great way to really kind of get an intuitive sense latency is count the hops. How many controllers did that I/O have to hit before it hit its final destination? And one of the beauties of our product, obviously, is that because we're PCI Express, there's one hop. If one would put a competing product of ours just is Zeus RAM, which is an excellent product. They handle some scenarios that we don't handle today. For example, because we're PCI Express, we don't handle high availability, which will be remedied in our next generation product. But today, if you want HA, Zeus RAM is just an excellent solution and does great with ZFS. But by nature of that design, they basically get HA for free because they use a SAS connector. But one of the kind of the failing of that is from a latency standpoint. So you can't talk directly to a Zeus RAM right from the CPU. So at best case you have a dedicated HBA, which is one hop on that controller, and then the second hop when you hit the controller on the device. And then a lot of customers unknowingly will put that in the JBOD, and now you have three hops, right? So you have HBA, expander, and then the device controller. And you can really kind of just roughly use magnitudes. So if you cut out a hop, 2 to 1, you've cut latency in half. Obviously 3 to 1 is a third. And then it also gets back to that question about contention. Do you really want your ZIL traffic contending with your TXG commits? So every whatever the heartbeat you would set, the default 5 seconds, every time you dump that to disk, do you really want that traffic contending with the ZIL traffic? I think there's great benefit in removing contention of I/O traffic. Is that? Yeah. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes.
How do you handle boot time or recovery of the ZL device?
Yeah, no, excellent question. So the flash is never utilized unless there's a power failure, but every power failure on power down, our device, you'll see a red LED, and it takes about 54 seconds for us to dump DRAM to flash. And the user obviously isn't really aware of that. And then on reboot, and then we basically restore NAND to DRAM, and that takes slightly less time, but still about a minute. But that's normally overlap with other startup functionality. So a lot of times you won't see the full impact of the 51 seconds. But there would be a delay on boot up. We guarantee, and it's again the beauty of owning the driver, is that we can guarantee that the card isn't accessed until the supercap is fully charged and the restore is obviously complete. So with the driver, it gives us really kind of ultimate control to cover every possible scenario as far as power failure and power return. So, is that?
I have another one.
Yeah, sure.
When you have Z pools with ZIL devices, how do you handle the move of the card from one head to another in failover cases?
Yeah, we don't support failover today, so there really isn't. You're not going to be ripping out a PCI Express. We just don't support HA today, but we will.
Oh, really?
Yes, our next generation product will be HA compatible. So
send me a mail.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah. Okay.
So you can't even manually once it's on the once it's stored on the flash and it's fully powered down. What would happen if you pulled it out of one machine and then put it into another?
Yeah, it would work. I mean, there's a lot of intelligence on basically all of these scenarios. So the card itself would know that it did a successful backup, and then it would know it tracks successful backups and successful restores, meaning that we support, if you do a quick power down, which kills a lot of certain other UPS systems. So if you do one power down and immediately another too quick, we support all those scenarios because we kind of track all of this in a very deep way. So it would work, but you know, the practicality of
Yeah, it's not very practical to open up your machine and pull out a PCI card.
yeah. If I were a marketer, I'd be like, yeah, that's, you know, but yeah, engineer it. We don't really promote that being a solution. Okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, sure.
But then how do you plan to implement high availability in the next generation? You mentioned that the next generation will support HA.
Yes.
And I'm just curious to know how you plan on doing that. What exactly do you mean practically?
Yeah, that's kind of, we feel we came up with a pretty unique solution, and we're just not ready to talk about it until we release it. I hate giving
Okay, so when's the release date?
I never promise a release. It's done when it's done. I don't really work by dates. I figure my name's on the card, and I release it when I feel it's, you know, in my mind, perfect. So I'm not the fastest guy, but we try to do it right the first time. So sadly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. And again, OpenZFS. Right. Yeah.